Hi, welcome. I'm Tian Wei, host of World Insight from CGTN, and I'm joined by two great friends of mine coming also from the BRICS countries. I'll let them to introduce themselves. Hi.
Hi, my name is Marcos Uchoa. I'm from Brazil, from BBC, which is the public channel of Brazil. And of course, we have another host because he's at home.
Yes, this is home for me. I'm Peter Ndoro, and I work in radio with the SABC's Channel Africa, but I also work in television with the BRICS Africa TV. We've just started a new channel specifically focused on BRICS. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely excited. This is like my first trip to Johannesburg, but certainly already very refreshing in terms of my earlier understanding through media reports about Joburg vis-a-vis what I saw today.
And this is what I find fascinating, isn't it? How the media generally portrays certain countries, and we have impressions. I had the same experience when I arrived in China the very first time. You have these images that you see through films and so on and so forth, and then when you arrive, it's a whole new world.
Indeed.
Yeah, Brazil in a way is carnival and football. We are a lot more than that.
All these stereotypes portraying of a country.
So it's great to be here so we can really talk and meet and really change and exchange more of ideas.
Let's talk about the BRICS first of all. We're here. Let's do the job. So it is going to be about a great grand occasion for the BRICS economies, together with many others from the African continent. So Peter, I'm sure he has a lot of thought about this because you're running a show on the issue. So tell me more about what is the expectation of the media here?
I think BRICS, more and more the people want to know what it means for them. They hear the name a lot, and it's BRICS, and they know what it means, but what does it mean in their lived experience?
Indeed.
How does it translate into how they live? That's on the citizen level. Then for us as journalists, we're curious about what does this chapter mean? This is the 15th iteration of BRICS now. And I want to see now proof of concept. We've heard them, they say these things, great speeches, great statements that are given out. I want to see practically how BRICS is working and how it can change and how it is changing. Now we're hearing talks about BRICS Plus. And where does that put Africa? Because up until now, South Africa has almost been the ambassador for the continent. And it's quite a responsibility because there's competition within the continent.
Like everywhere.
And then to now have South Africa as this single voice, almost like these G20 meetings where South Africa again goes and sits there and is regarded as the voice of the continent, which I don't think is fair because there are huge economies on the continent. So BRICS Plus will be a great thing for South Africa because it doesn't then have the, I don't want to use the word burden, but the sole responsibility of being the African voice. And I'd like to hear what the other African countries have to say about a BRICS Plus and where it fits in.
That's a fascinating point, isn't it? We're going to hear a lot of diversified voices coming from the African continent. But this is a very ambitious, likely to be a historic summit for the BRICS.
Yeah, definitely. I think for Brazil, in a way, we had the same problem in representing Latin America in a way. But in a way, Brazil, even we speak Portuguese. In most of Latin America, speak Spanish. So there's a big difference of a culture as well. And I think culturally, it's interesting to be part of BRICS because Brazil is part of a little bit of the Western world, and we were always looking to America or to Europe, and BRICS showed us another world, and it's showing a lot more that we need more of this world, and not only economically, but I think we need to learn more of what's happening in Africa and what's happening in Asia and what's India, what's China, what's South Africa, and many other countries that eventually will come to BRICS as well. So I think it's a great opportunity And President Lula, particularly, I think is very keen on opening up the world and talking more among ourselves. As you were saying, we need to talk directly. And I think that's the focus of Lula is a lot more of this directness between our countries to help each other, not only in terms of the economy.
How can we take great advantage of this opportunity that the Global South will be able to speak in a bigger voice and more quality voice?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Africa has 54 countries. So even before we get to the idea that we're joining another grouping, which is BRICS Plus, we still have to deal with the questions and the issues of the continent amongst ourselves. And then what is that voice then that we take to a bigger grouping such as BRICS? So I'll be fascinated to see, is there a common position on the continent about what BRICS should do and can do? Because we deal with Lusophone, Francophone, Anglophone, and then there's the local languages and local cultures, which are very different. So how does BRICS Plus help the continent, and how do we interpret the BRICS Plus going forward? I'll be curious to hear what the African delegates have to say and how they view BRICS actually.
You know, the consensus building is really what you're talking about. How do we build consensus, first of all, on the African continent? How is that consensus building interact in a very much a chemistry way with the consensus building among the BRICS themselves?
You know, we have a responsibility as well as journalists to talk about subjects that are very important to our societies, and inequality, for instance, from South America is very big, Africa as well. Fortunately, China is a lot further down this road in improving. But we have to talk about, for instance, technology and jobs. You have a problem with this for young people. We have the same problem. You have the same problem. We have to talk about the environment, climate change. You know, I find, for instance, that now it's an avoidable subject. You know, we had this meeting, this summit for the Amazon countries and the two Congos in Indonesia, countries that have still tropical forests, and we have to do something about it. And I find that the country that has the clout and the power to do it really is China. Because, you know, what you did in the past decades was so quick to change the lives of so many people, and we need a power that can say we have to stop and we have to change and we have to do it quickly. And I don't see America can do this. The American government is too tied with business interests. So I find that Chinese people and China's government has the power to lead this change in terms of the environment. I think BRICS is a way, has to talk about that as well.
I am fascinated by the anti-apartheid movement of your country. How you'll be able to bring this, revolution of society and change, over the decades to make things happen, to bring the human society to a new stage, namely. Of course, there are new challenges, once in governance. It's a very complicated, indeed. And also about Brazil. You will see President Lula and his administration very ambitious in not only your own domestic policy, but also in, let's just say, about developing economies, emerging economy, including on the BRICS platform. But, how that will be interacting with the domestic agenda of your country. This is, as a journalist coming from China, I'm absolutely fascinated about.
Yeah, we have a problem, I think, because technology is changing so fast that the gap between us and, in a way, China and developed countries is becoming wider and wider. And so we are becoming a commodities economy. And this is very bad. Our agriculture business is very modern, which is good, but at the same time, it does not translate in jobs because it's so modern. So this trend, if it continues, is a disaster for society. We have really this green economy that we talk about, this new system that we want to build has to create a better life for our people. And this has to translate in jobs. We cannot talk only about money because, no, I have 100 and you have 0 and we have 50 each. It's not true. And we cannot continue like this. So I think for Brazil particularly, it's very rewarding times because you're right, our system of government does not allow us long-term. Mid-term would be better. Long-term, it's a dream, but it's very difficult.
Yeah.
So there's this instability because our people suffer so much from poverty that they are impatient, and rightly so.
And for us, I think the big word is inequality. You don't want to leave anybody behind, but the challenges that we're facing is that our population is growing faster than the economy can create jobs that can grow the economy to a rate where people are brought along. We're struggling with power. And once you don't have power, a lot of the technology becomes problematic. Small businesses, small enterprises, by and large, are the ones that are going to create the employment. But they can't afford the power solutions. So we have a lot of challenges that we need to overcome. But sadly, we're not doing it quick enough. And so as a result, the inequality is growing faster and faster. And so that rainbow nation that you talked about, that story now is very different because a certain racial grouping, a certain class is prospering in this new South Africa. And those that are getting left behind are getting poorer and poorer. And so it's a difficult story. And I wish we could find a Chinese way to solve this, because when I hear that 600, 700 million people have been brought out of poverty, we have a small population in comparison, but our problem is bigger. And how do we solve that?
Having said that, though, there seems to be some kind of solution that many are inspiring about. That is, how can we complement one another, especially when we are facing with different sets of challenges. You talk about that, right? For example, the technologies, for example, different governance styles, for example, inequality. How can we build out of challenges? At this point, a global supply chain very much disrupted, and especially after the global pandemic. So you got commodities among our economies. We've also got huge markets. We got young population, great for labor for the future. Meanwhile, we also have people that are vibrant, discussing about what is the best way forward among all our economies. Can we put all of those things together?
The average age of an African is 19. And so we are young, we have lots of energy. And what I find about the average African is that he will find a solution no matter what's happening around them. What I would love to see is the BRICS nations giving us a little bit of support. China, you've gone far in terms of industrialization and finding solutions. If we could bring that journey, the creativity is here, the desire is here, but mostly what you'll hear is, I need somebody just to give me a leg up, a little bit of finance, a little bit of capital. And that's where, for me, I would love to see the BRICS Bank play its role in supporting these businesses, because the ideas are there. It's not that we don't know what to do, it's the difficulty in getting it off the ground. And if we can get it off the ground, the landscape will change very quickly.
A lot of it has to do with funding, but also a lot of it has to do with skill sets. A lot of it has to do with the styles of working. How can we make that happen? That's a wonderful question, I guess.
In a way, when we talk about young people, I think our young people, my children, they are drowning in entertainment. Really drowning. With their mobiles, they are really looking at things that really don't push them to grow. And this is a problem, I think. You know, they are frustrated because the opportunities are not very good.
Yeah.
In a way, sports created this lie that, you know, really try and you can have a dream and you... No, it's not true. There's only one gold medal, only one champion. And so there is this mix of frustration and willingness to do something,
I'm
to
going to
grow.
challenge you on that a little bit, though, because one of the things I've started to learn is you and I, with grey hair and no hair, we don't think like them.
Yeah.
And if we enable them and let them do what they need to do, they've got the solutions. We are looking at a new world through old eyes, and we can't help to do that because we're at this age. These young people, you may see it as entertainment, but the people who are producing content on Instagram and YouTube and so on and so forth, that is an entire economy.
Yes,
That is an
definitely.
entire
Yeah,
world.
indeed.
And what we should be doing is saying, what do you need for you to do what you need to do? Instead of us looking through those old lenses of, don't watch so much television. Now, it is the watching of the television or the screens that is creating these new kinds of economies. And I just wonder if we shouldn't be getting out of their way rather than trying to force them in.
So it's less about, you know, being polite and timid. And this generation is bringing a lot of vitality and energy into the overall process. So that's something very eye-opening for me.
Definitely, that's what, when you began, you're talking, we need to talk more directly between us.
Indeed.
More about culture, not only about politics.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying as well. So
Also about Brazil. And the young people in Brazil were so vibrant and active in those issues at the time when those issues were not the priority, not like today.
Yeah, yeah.
Everybody's talking about climate change. So how we are going to bring all these energies into real policy making, implementation of policy making.
You guys can carry on doing what you do. We're going to get on with it. If BRICS is to succeed, it has to start looking younger than it's looking right now.
About bringing vitality into the discussion. We're not saying the politicians are not without vitality, but rather how can we bring in more consensus even among our societies into the high-end top discussions going on at the leaders meeting. I guess that's some of the things these mechanisms need to work out.
yeah, people need to participate more.
Yeah.
But as you said,
But
young
also
people are very
consensus,
frustrated,
yeah.
because they're not really, the channels are blocked for their participation. And so they go, they come, they talk, and nothing really happens.
But you know, that is with one important condition, that is the public is well informed. Only when they are well informed, they will be able to come to the discussion with real opinions and real way forward. That's the job of the media, isn't it?
Yeah, and for me, what I'm finding more and more is where do you tell those stories?
Yes. And how do you tell those stories?
And that's become a fascinating journey for me. You grow up on the typewriter.
Yeah, definitely.
Graduated to the computer.
You sit in front of a camera, you tell the story, and yet these young people, my daughter's never bought a newspaper in her life.
Yeah.
And now they consume news in a completely different
Yeah.
way. The language that we use is not the language that they understand.
Yeah.
And so how I tell my stories now, I'm always mindful about, am I telling this on the right platform, in the right way? I can sit in front of the camera and speak to what I think is an audience. But it's only when it lands on YouTube or TikTok or
That gets
Yeah,
that it
the
gets
power
to
of
the-
platforms
yes,
talking
yes.
about it. Yeah,
And
so
that's changed the journalism, though, hasn't it?
yeah, a lot.
tremendously.
But in a way, it's becoming a lot harder because they are not used to watch something for a long time. They want something small. They want something short that really if you don't explain this well in 1 minute, forget it. And some of the issues are very complex. And we cannot really minimize or simplify something that is really difficult to
Right.
understand. So, in a way, trying to get to them, sometimes we need to do it, but it's not easy. They have to learn, they have to want to learn. And notice that, some issues, they really have to devote more time to it because, it's not easy. It's not a solution like this. There's nothing. It's a complex problems that we have in the world right now.
Yeah.
So, in a way, technology is harming sometimes comprehension of our problems.
Do you think that these problems are as complex as we think they are? I sometimes think that the problems are not that complex, but because we have in 1945, 1948, we set up a Security Council, we set up a mechanism, we set up X, Y, Z. We've complicated things that could actually be very simple to solve. And maybe we need to start undoing so that young people can say, that now makes sense.
Yeah, but this mechanism you're talking about is exactly the topic of discussion, isn't it, for the BRICS? How can we build a mechanism that's efficient, that can bring in more diversity of ideas, and yet at the same time bring out the best policy for all of us, be complementary under these new circumstances? It takes a new generation of wisdom in a way.
Absolutely.
Having said that though, I do want to ask you about something related to this, because we all live between cultures. You work in London for a long time. Your parents coming from different parts of the African continent. You now work in South Africa. And you also, earlier a correspondent in Europe. After 10 years there, now you're running one of the most successful shows, talk shows, in fact. Every Tuesday talking to your president.
Yes.
That's a luxury I would have, like every journalist would love to have. Yes, indeed. And me also, I was a Washington correspondent, covered the war in Iraq, Afghanistan, some of the interesting elections there. And then I found out there are so much stories back at home. I want to do our homeland stories. That's why we are all in our own countries now. So how can we, whether it's compromise or rather combine our world experiences living between cultures with our home stories these days? We're so hands-on. I think that's a mind-boggling question I'm thinking every day, but excitedly thinking about it.
I think social media, and we as people, we compare each other. We compare ourselves to our neighbors, to our brothers and sisters all the time. So what we have and experience is exactly, we have been to the world and we saw many different things. So was good, this was not so good. So we can really learn and then show to our people, there's a good idea that we could have it. And then we can mimic, and as I said, we could copy and paste a lot of things that are going well. This is, I think, our role as journalists as well, to show good things, not only bad things. Sometimes journalists can be very negative. And I think we have to, I think young people definitely don't like that so much.
For me, I think the important message, particularly for young Africans, is to get them to believe that they are good, excellent, and can contribute original thoughts and ideas on a global platform. The continent has taught us, sadly, because of colonization and whatever it is, we constantly believe that it's bigger and better out there. And what we need to be doing as journalists, I think, is, because we've been out there and we competed and we sat in those studios and we did all of those things, and they're not different, and we've excelled. And so I want, through our work, to teach the young man, young girl, that you are as good as anybody else on the planet. Take your idea.
Be proud.
Be proud, and don't look to the West. Don't look and say, oh, I have to make it in America. No, you can make it here. America will catch up with you, not the other way around. And I just want to give through our work, a sense of self-belief and confidence. You don't have to go to America, you don't have to go to London. You can do amazing things from here because a lot of what you're doing, they're going to copy.
Right.
They're going to try and follow us if we believe in our project.
Come to think about it, the stories that we are reading over the past decades, many of those stories are coming from, quote unquote, the West. I hate to use that general term, but that's how things worked then.
Yeah, immediately.
Yet now, there are so much diversities in our world. For example, from South Africa, this is an eye-opening process for me, only being here for 48 hours. Also, when I covered the climate change conference in Rio, only 3 days, but it's making me a very different person when it comes to Brazilian stories. So the thing is, how can we be inspiring for one another? How can we be each other's sources? How can we bring our stories closer to your home and make sure that the public could trust? I think that's a pretty much a test for all of us in a way, Marcos.
Yeah, it's a challenge really to have BRICS because we have such a different cultures.
Indeed, but that's the fascinating,
incredible
exactly.
It's fascinating because we really can see something that we could never see being stuck with our sides. So I think believe that BRICS, that one of the best part of BRICS is really this opening our eyes to different ways of thinking and different opportunities.
I would love for us to share more content. I would love to see more Brazilian programming on my screens at home. I would love to see more Chinese books translated into English in my libraries. And then we can start to get an understanding. Actually, do you know what? We're not that different.
No!
Our languages may be different, but our hopes, ambitions, desires are the same. And once we get to that point, it's much easier and much quicker to start to do things together. Because we just want to be happy. We just want to have a job. We just want to be secure.
Family, friends.
All the same. But I won't get that until I consume Chinese media, until I get Brazilian media, until I get Indian media, until our South African story is told across these countries. Only then can we start to say, okay, BRICS is us. It may look Chinese in parts, it may look Brazilian in parts, but it is actually us.
You know, gentlemen, it's really the time that we look at one another directly in the eyes. So thank you so much, Marcos.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Peter.